Om Namo Bhagavate Sri Ramanaya. Namaskaram. Today I'm going to start by talking about verse 29 of Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu Anubandham. Just as a reminder, that the ideas are arranged in an order. So there's at least, though they're verses composed on many different occasions and under many different circumstances, they're arranged in an order for a certain degree of continuity between them. Verse 28, it was describing about describing the state of the jnani. The meaning of verse 28, just briefly, I'll recap. Whoever is one who has destroyed the senses by knowledge, one who is fixed firmly as existence awareness, is a self-knower. He is the fire of knowledge, one who wields the thunderbolt of knowledge. Declare that he, Kalakalan, is the hero who has killed death. So likewise, this verse 29 is also about the state of the jnani. The jnani means the one who has, as it's put here, who has seen the reality, who has known themselves as they actually are. The verse is Tattvam Kandavaku Tame Valarum Oli Buddhi Valuvam Vasantum Pondume Itarayil Taru Varahadi Sakala Gunangalum Sera Bilangal Enater. The meaning of this is brightness and strength of intellect will increase automatically for those who have seen the reality. Just like trees shining with all good qualities such as beauty as soon as spring arrives on this earth. No. This is, as I said, this is talking about Tattvam Kandavaku, for those who have known, who have seen the reality. That is light, Oli means light, brightness, or brilliance, or clarity, and Buddhi Valuvam means the strength of intellect. So these qualities of brightness and strength of intellect will increase. The word for wait a second, sorry, the word for increase is valarum, which means it will grow or it will increase. These will automatically grow when the reality, for those who have seen the reality. Superficially, the word Oli in the original Sanskrit. Oh, this is by the way, this is a verse that Bhagavan translated from Yoga Vashista, part 5, chapter 76, verse 20. In the original, the word used was tejas. Bhagavan translated that as Oli. That means, as I say, it means light, brightness, brilliance. So superficially, we can take it to mean, but outwardly, they will be seen to be very bright, very, very, very shining, very. They will be very luminous. How to put it? They will appear as very bright personalities. To put it, it's difficult to put it in words, but but it actually only has a deeper meaning than just the external appearance of brightness or brilliance. It is referring to an inner clarity. That is the seeing the reality is the state of infinite clarity. So in those who have seen the reality, there will be this they are completely absorbed in that clarity. That clarity will appear outwardly. They will be seen to be very, very bright, very bright. Uh, um, they'll be shining as very bright people. And that brightness that is also gives us a result of that brightness, that clarity, is the strength of intellect. But these are not just talking about the outward appearance of these. Inwardly, they will be very bright and have a strong intellect is one that can clearly distinguish the real from the unreal, the eternal from the ephemeral. And as a result of this brightness, they will be they will be completely transformed. A few recently during one of the Zoom meetings, someone referred to a certain devotee of Bhagavan who claimed that a jnani will not, but there's a difference between a jnani and a saint. But not all jnanis will be saints, implying that not all jnanis will have perfect, will behave in a perfect manner. This is a misunderstanding. That is when jnana, and that person apparently went on to say, after jnana, the same vasanas that were there before will continue. But this is a misunderstanding. Firstly, because the dawn of jnana is vasanakshaya, the destruction of all vasanas. And secondly, because all bad qualities, all bad behavior originates from bad vasanas. As Bhagavan says in the 19th paragraph of Nana, there are not two minds, a good mind and a bad mind. Mind is only one. But the vasanas are of two kinds, subha and asubha. Subha means agreeable, good, favorable, and asubha means disagreeable, bad, unfavorable. So Bhagavan says when the mind is under the sway of subha vasanas, we call it a good mind. When it's under the sway of asubha vasanas, we call it a bad mind. So the asubha vasanas are rooted in selfishness. So long as when ego is strong, it will care only about its own well-being, and so it will be selfish. It will behave in an immoral fashion. It won't act within the constraints of morality or ethics. But while we progress on the spiritual path, the asubha vasanas are gradually replaced by subha vasanas. So the bad qualities automatically drop off us, particularly if we're following this path of self-investigation. Because by following this path of self-investigation, ego subsides more and more. And the more ego subsides, the more its selfishness will subside. So when ego is completely eradicated, the outward appearance of a person that remains will have all good qualities. that is in the clarity, what Bhagavan refers to here as Oli, in that inner clarity, there will be no room for any selfishness or bad qualities to arise. So outwardly, the jnani will always behave in a perfect fashion. That doesn't mean that we will always understand the behavior of a jnani. Sometimes a jnani, when I say a jnani, I mean here the person whom a jnani seems to be, will sometimes act in a way, but we may not understand why they are acting in that way, but it will always be a perfect, it'll not be, there'll be no taint of selfishness in any of their actions. So this idea that a jnani is not necessarily a saint, and that a jnani can behave somehow in an immoral fashion or an improper fashion is a serious misunderstanding. When, as Bhagavan says in this verse, when we see the reality, the inner brightness or clarity will automatically increase. So in that clarity, there'll be no room for any bad vasanas to arise or to function. So the jnani is the most saintly of all saints. Or, I mean, a jnani cannot be anything but a perfect person. Though outwardly, because we don't always understand the behavior of a jnani, they may not always appear to us to be perfect, but actually whatever a jnani does, because in the jnani there is no ego, so whatever actions are done by the mind, speech, or body of the jnani are actions done by God. So they are perfect actions. They are the actions which are appropriate according to the situation. Because of our limited intellect, we may not always understand the jnani. That is why in Tamil there's a saying, Murugan apparently often used to quote this, Pambin kal pambe arium. That means the legs of a snake are known only to a snake. That is a way of saying that only the jnani can know, recognize, and understand another jnani. Not that there are many jnanis, actually jnana is one, but so long as we look outwards, we see a multiplicity of jnanis, though inwardly they are all one. So the outward, the one who that is any person whom a jnani seems to be will recognize any other person whom the same jnani seems to be. So because of our limited understanding, we may not always understand the behavior of jnanis, but the behavior of jnanis cannot be anything but perfect. So the idea that a jnani can continue to have selfish qualities or can behave in an immoral fashion, sometimes people point to Krishna, for example, and say, oh, Krishna did many things that are against Dharma, but that is because of our limited idea of what is Dharma. Actually, Krishna, even when he seemed to be doing something but was not in accordance with Dharma, it was actually always the perfect thing to do, because God is above all the Dharma. I mean, God transcends Dharma. The codes of behavior that are laid down in sastras and in the scriptures of any religion, these are meant for us to follow because we don't have the clarity to see what is the perfect thing to do in each situation. But for the jnani, what is the correct thing to do will automatically be clear. Because as I say, it's only God acting through the jnani, and God is all-knowing. So everything, the actions of the jnani will always be perfect, even if we are not able to understand the perfection that lies in their actions. So that is in the clarity that Bhagavan refers to in this verse, the Oli, the light, there will be no room for any selfishness or any bad qualities to arise. Only it, it, Vijnani cannot do anything wrong. Whatever Vijnani does, that is, as I say, there's no ego in Vijnani that is acting. So we can attribute the actions of Vijnani only to God, and God will always act in the perfect manner. So, yeah, so, and the analogy Bhagavan used in this verse, just like trees shining with all good qualities, such as beauty, as soon as spring arrives on earth. That is, spring automatically brings beauty to trees. It brings the trees into leaf, it brings them into flower. So the trees automatically look beautiful when spring comes. Just like that, all the qualities of clarity and strength or skill of intellect will automatically flourish in those who have for those who have seen the reality. I hope this is an adequate explanation of this verse. Does anyone have any questions they'd like to ask about this?
I do, Michael.
Yes.
Good afternoon, I guess. So in the case of the jnani, are all the samskaras and vasanas burned up?
Completely. That is one of the definitions of jnana is vasanakshaya. Vasanakshaya means destruction of vasanas. Because what is the root of all vasanas? The root of all vasanas is ego.
Ego.
Whose vasanas are they? They're ego's vasanas. So when
Yeah.
ego is destroyed, all the vasanas are destroyed. But because in the view of us as jnanis, we see the jnani as a person. So the jnani, having a body, not only has a body, but also has has a has a mind, and therefore has vasanas in our view. So Bhagavan behaves in certain ways. He acts as if he's a person like us in this world because we see him as a person. But actually, what he is, he doesn't act at all. He's just pure being. But we see him as a person, and as a person, naturally, he behaves as if he had body and mind and so on, which he doesn't actually have.
So in other words, any behaviors or attributes that we experience of the jnani are only our projections.
Only our projections, yes. But the person that the jnani seems to be, the body and mind and so on, exist only in our view.
I see.
As Bhagavan said, because we mistake ourselves to be a body, we mistake the jnani to be a body.
Right.
Because we mistake ourselves to be a person, we mistake the jnani to be a person. But that is not what the jnani actually is. The jnani is actually the infinite space of pure being awareness.
So then the appearance of the jnani in our mind is the grace of Bhagavan helping us to progress along this path.
Exactly. Bhagavan also gave an analogy of the lion that appears in the dream of the elephant. It is believed that elephants are not afraid of anything except of lions, and they're so afraid of a lion that if an elephant dreams of a lion, the shock of seeing a lion will make it wake up. So, but Bhagavan said the jnana guru is like the lion seen by the elephant in its dream. That is when we say the jnana guru. That means the outward form of the jnana guru. The person whom the jnana guru seems to be is just like that a lion in the form of in the dream of an elephant. The lion in that dream is unreal, but the awakening is real. Likewise, the name and form of a guru is unreal, but it brings about the real awakening.
Right. So that when we see the lion or the guru or the jnani in our mental projection. That is the grace of the Lord shining upon us.
Exactly. That is what shines through an ordinary person is an ego. So we see the ego manifest in so many ways in a person, but what is shining through the jnani is not an ego, but is jnana itself.
And we don't have the capacity to know whether or not someone else is a jnani
No, of
unless
course
we are
not.
a jnani.
Yeah, because the legs of a snake are known only to a snake.
Right.
Because when we see the actions of Bhagavan, we don't just see the actions. In our mind, whatever we see, we are constantly interpreting things. In
Right.
fact, perception is itself an interpretation.
Yeah.
If we think of it from a physical point of view, light is entering our eyes and stimulating the retina, and certain electrochemical messages are sent to the brain. But it's the mind that out of this builds
Yeah.
this picture. I mean,
Well,
that's if we accept the external world actually exists. But actually, according to Bhagavan, the whole thing is a mental, it's all just a dream. So even the body and
ajata.
well, no, not a jata.
Mm.
A jata is the final truth. There's no dream at all.
Oh, in the temporary condition where
Yeah,
we're
yeah. I mean,
awakening, we
we're
have a
talking
dream. Yeah.
Bhagavan's teachings, though Bhagavan said that Ajata is the ultimate truth, Bhagavan didn't teach Ajata. Bhagavan taught Drishti Shrishti.
I see.
Because as he begins Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu with the words, because we see the world.
Right. Right.
In Ajata, there's no world to be seen and no one to
Right.
see it. There is just pure being. But
Right.
because we have risen as ego, we experience ourselves as a person and experience a world. So it's only at that level that, but this is all just a dream.
So
So,
then oh, excuse me, go ahead.
so what I was saying is all perception is interpretation. We are constantly interpreting things. So this is the problem with when we hear stories about Bhagavan, or when we read people who've recorded things that Bhagavan said, conversations with Bhagavan, like talks and day by day and everything. What we're reading there is not Bhagavan's actual words, but what the person recording understood.
Yes.
So understanding is always filtered. I mean, understanding is a process of interpretation. So we're interpreting everything.
Mm-hmm.
So it's easy for us to see a jnani, to misinterpret them and think, oh, what this person did was wrong.
Right.
But but that's in our limited view.
Right.
The jnani is unlimited. So we can never adequately understand the state of a jnani. The only way to understand the state of a jnani is to be that. Being alone is seeing.
Exactly.
You can see Bhagavan as he actually is only by being as he actually is.
Consumed by the tiger, we become Bhagavan.
Yeah, yeah.
So
well, consumed by the tiger, but the tiger alone remains. Bhagavan alone remains.
right, right. So, for those of us who are still wet banana trees, what is the danger of spiritual bypass in pretending, the ego pretending as if it's a awakened being?
Well, that's the biggest that's the biggest mire of all. I mean, there are many people who I mean, some people, they have some experience and they misinterpret that experience as jnana. So they genuinely believe they're in some elevated spiritual state. There are many other people who are simple frauds. Sadhu Om used to say, if you want to cheat people, the easiest way to cheat people is in spirituality. Because if you go to a vegetable market and put a pile of stones and say they're aubergines, nobody's going to fool you. But anyone who comes to a vegetable market can tell the difference between a stone and an aubergine. If you go to a diamond market with glass beads, you may be able to fool some people because not everyone can distinguish a genuine diamond from a glass bead. But if you go to the spiritual marketplace, you can sell anything and everything because nobody knows what is true spirituality. So
So
if you want to cheat, the easiest way to cheat is in the spiritual field.
Thank you. We always need to avoid spiritual bypass. Yes.
I'm not quite sure what spiritual bypass means,
Oh,
but
I'll just briefly, and then I'll let Kumar. So spiritual bypass is when we pretend as if we are a jnani, but we are in fact still have samskaras and vasanas.
yes. In other words, there's still ego. Ego
Yeah, right.
imagining itself to be egoless, which is a contradiction in terms. Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I mean by
So,
spiritual bypass.
so
Yeah.
long as there's any imagining, the imaginer is ego.
Okay. Thank you, Michael.
Right.
So along the same lines, Jishin's posted a question. So many teachers these days are abusing their position. How can we be sure that one is a jnani? What are the signs?
We cannot be sure. If we can, Bhagavan sometimes said, there is only one jnani, you are that. That is, it's only by jnana is our real nature. And the jnani is nothing but jnana itself. Jnana means pure awareness. Jnani means what knows pure awareness. So what knows pure awareness? Only pure awareness knows pure awareness. So as Bhagavan often used to say, jnana me jnani. Jnana alone is the jnani. So we can know, since jnana is pure awareness can never be an object of awareness. So what knows pure awareness can only be pure awareness. So it's only by being pure awareness that we can know pure awareness. So we cannot know the jnani until we know what we ourselves actually are. But we need not worry. I mean, let anyone be a jnani or a jnani. It's no concern of us. We came here not to find out, is this person a jnani, that person a jnani. We came here to find out, who am I? So let us not concern ourselves with others. We should be seeking to know what we ourselves actually are. When we know ourselves as we actually are, we will see there is only jnana, and therefore no such thing as an ajnani at all.
So
That is why Bhagavan often used to say the guru is a guru only in the view of the disciple, not in the view of the guru. Because in the view of the guru, there are no others. There's no such thing as ajnana. So any guru who thinks I am a guru is not the real guru. They're a guru in a very inferior sense of the term. When Bhagavan uses the term guru, he uses it in the very highest sense of the term.
So let me rephrase
Can I just say one more thing? One more thing.
Yeah.
That is why, but in the 12th paragraph of Nana, Bhagavan says, Kadavalam Guruvum Unmail Verala. God and Guru in truth are not other. That doesn't mean every Tom, Dick, and Harry who claims to be a guru is God. It means the real God alone is the guru. Oh, no one other than God is qualified to be guru. So it's guru is not a person. Though guru appears in human form, that human form is not what the guru actually is. Guru is the light of awareness that is ever shining in our heart as our own being, I am. Because we are looking outwards, it's necessary for guru to appear outwardly in name and form, in human form, in order to tell us to turn back within.
Michael,
Yes.
thank you so much.
One second, Angelica. I'm just going to follow up on that question. So, how did you get attracted to Ramana? What made you know that he is it for you?
Simple, very simple. His grace alone. How can we understand? I mean, none of us can say we understand Bhagavan, but at least we have an inkling of the greatness of Bhagavan. But that inkling comes only by his grace. So his grace alone is what attracts us to his outward form.
True.
People
What-
often ask, how did you come to Bhagavan? I say there's only one true answer any of us can give. We can tell a story, but that story is not the real thing. We come to Bhagavan only by his grace. So the story of how I came to Bhagavan, that's all irrelevant. What is relevant is by his grace, he has drawn us to him.
But so there wasn't anything that in particular attracted you to him. It's true that grace is following. But what is it that attracted you as you as a person? I mean, there were a lot of other spiritual teachers, right? So what is it that attracted you to him?
When I first heard about Bhagavan, when I first heard Bhagavan's name, at that time I happened to be in Sri Lanka. I was staying in a Buddhist vihara, where there was a vihara where many foreigners were staying there because it was sort of, they had it open, anyone could stay there. And I met a couple from, I think they were from Newcastle in the north of England. And the lady said to me, "Have you heard of Ramana Maharshi?" I said no. And then she had a copy of Arthur Osborne's book. So she gave me Arthur Osborne's book and asked me to read about Bhagavan's death experience. That was the first I came to know about Bhagavan. That aroused my curiosity. So I thought when I returned to India, I'll go and visit Ramanashram. But then when I returned to India, for some reason, I decided I wanted to go because it was a bit early spring, and I thought now would be a good time to go to the Himalayas because there were places in the Himalayas that I hadn't visited. So I went and spent another summer in the Himalayas. And only at the end of that summer, I decided to return and come to Tiruvannamalai. But I knew very little about Bhagavan. In the meanwhile, I'd heard a little bit. When I was in the Himalayas that summer, I met one person who was half English, half Spanish, and he had some of Paul Brunton's books. And I remember he told me, I like his books. I don't like the person, referring to Paul Brunton. But so he told me that Paul Brunton had written about Bhagavan. So I read a little bit about what Paul Brunton had written about Bhagavan. I think the book he had at that time was something like the Quest of the Overself or Beyond the Overself or something. I can't remember. One of Paul Brunton's books. I've never really studied Paul Brunton, but it was one of those. So I read a little bit there. So like that, I heard here and there people who knew about Bhagavan, but I really didn't. I knew very, very little apart from that. What I read in Osborne's book about the death experience, I really didn't know much about Bhagavan, but there was some attraction. So I returned after the summer was over and came to Tiruvannamalai, but it was still only curiosity. I thought I may stay for a few days. But then when I came there, when I read Who Am I understood this is what I've been looking for. Because before that, I've been vaguely looking for some spiritual path or something that would give some meaning or purpose to my life. But though I'd tried some Buddhist some Vipassana meditation, I'd read many books and everything, I hadn't yet found something that really clicked. It all interested me, all attracted me, but nothing clicked until I read Who Am I? It probably wasn't a very good translation of Who Am I, but when I read it, I understood, oh, this is what I've been looking for. So I would say it was, if you want an external explanation, it was Bhagavan's teachings that attracted me initially. And then, of course, the more I read his teachings, the more I became attracted to Bhagavan as the person that he seemed to be.
So the teachings the clarity, the simplicity and the beauty of his teachings attracted you first.
Yes. But remember, this is all only by his grace. Because why?
Right. It's all due his grace, but
why some of us are attracted to Bhagavan and some aren't attracted?
Some of us are not. Right. Yeah. So that is, but I'm trying to, but at least we can do a bit of our part, right? I mean, there is, we can put in some effort. I mean,
we have to put in effort.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. Like we have to put in
effort to yield ourselves to his grace. His grace is waiting to swallow us at any time, but we have to. He's not going to swallow us until we yield ourselves to him.
So, is it the teachings attracted you to him first?
Yes.
And then you said that slowly and steadily you were attracted to Bhagavan as a person too.
Yes.
I know just about everything in Bhagavan is attractive, but what are some specific things that there are 2 or 3 things that really it told you, this is it. And so I know now who he is. Something that that told you that.
It's very difficult to say. As I say, when I read Who Am I understood this is what I've been looking for. It seemed to me so obvious when I read that. Yes, of course, before we can know anything else, first we have to know who we are. If we don't even know who we are, what value does anything that we know about anything else have? So it seemed to me obvious the starting point of any true investigation, any true search for knowledge has to begin with the knower. Without knowing the knower, how can we claim to know anything else? So definitely Bhagavan's teachings, but then I was very fortunate. Very soon after I came to Tiruvannamalai, I met Sadhu Om, and being in the company of Sadhu Om for more than 8 years really had a transformative effect on me, because he had so much love for Bhagavan and love for Bhagavan's teachings, of course, and that love was infectious. So I really I don't think I would have understood Bhagavan as I'm now able to understand him if it hadn't been for those 8.5 years that I was very fortunate to be in the company of Sadhu Om.
Right. So there is also, and coming back to, I'm just still, trying to get in, sticking with Jishan's question. One of the things that I use sort of as a yardstick is in Bhagavad Gita. It clearly describes jnani as someone who has transcended all the 3 gunas, including sattva guna.
Yes.
So to me that was helpful. So if you want to really know the person, and you just study him as much as you can, whatever is externally appearing.
Yes.
If there is a lot of things that is, I need to do this, I need to do that, I need to, then, that's not how jnani should be behaving, right? That's a pretty strong clue.
I think there's another description in the Bhagavad Gita of the jnani, Sarva Arambha Parityagi, the one who has renounced all initiative, all rising to do anything. Bhagavan never of his own accord gave any teachings. He gave only when people asked him did he give teachings. So Bhagavan is a perfect example of that Sarva Arambha Parityagi.
Yeah, so to me that is one is a sort of a litmus test almost to see if for example, there was there are some gurus here these days, and even in the past, I want to go to United States, I want to go to UK, and I want to set up an ashram there. I need to have 100 branches in the next few months or next few years.
One thing, the real guru has no mission.
Exactly, right.
So
a jnani won't have any of those.
Missionary zeal This is missionary zeal can occur only in the state of ajnana. In the state of jnana, there's nothing to be achieved, nothing to be, everything is as perfect as it is. Because
Right.
everything is only, what appears as everything is actually only one thing, and that one thing is perfect.
And even most of Bhagavan's works were all in response to somebody's request.
Yes.
Except for one or two spontaneous outpourings, like
Aranatya Ashtakam, even Aranatya Patikam and Ashtakam, when people remark, Bhagavan, these were the only works you composed of your own accord. Bhagavan, I think Bhagavan one day was saying how he never gave any teaching of his own accord. And someone said, what about Aranatya Ashtakam and Aranatya Patikam and Ashtakam? Bhagavan said, just like you people prompted me from outside, Aranatya prompted me from within. Nothing is of my own accord.
Right. Thank you, Michael. So I think that pretty much answers Jason's question. Let me now.
Someone else came on the screen.
Yeah, there is a question, but before I go in there, there's somebody who asked like almost a month ago. Let me finish that first. So this person posted the question in the last month's video. The name that they gave is like Jasnair. So I'm going to read the question. You sort of answered it earlier, but I'll still go ahead and still read it if there's anything else you want to add. When one wakes up from a dream, he is by definition no longer in it.
Yes.
How then could Bhagavan wake up, yet still be able to act in a world his senses could not see, prompted by Vasanas he no longer had? Destruction of senses? Shouldn't the body disappear? The body is a son of a barren woman, so it should not exist once one wakes up. Further, if there's only one ego, one universal ego head, then once the first guy wakes up, shouldn't the world have disappeared? Game over. It just generated so much responses in there, and I think you also emailed me to remind you. So please go ahead.
Okay. There is one ego, but it's not some universal ego. The one who is seeing this dream is ego. And the Bhagavan we talk about, when we talk about Bhagavan as a person, that Bhagavan is not in his dream, it's in our dream. We are dreaming this dream, and Bhagavan appears in this dream in order to tell us to turn within. If the one ego who is now seeing this dream wakes up, that is the end of all dreaming, because there is only one dreamer. So the dreamer needs to investigate itself to find out who am I. When the dreamer finds out who it actually is, it ceases to be dreamer and remains as pure awareness, which is what it always actually is. So when we talk about Bhagavan has awakened, so why did the world still continue to exist? We fail to understand what Bhagavan is saying. The main point that Bhagavan is saying, all this exists only in our view. That's why the next few verses we're going to deal with, they're all dealing with the state of the jnani. And Bhagavan very clearly indicates, I think in which verse is it? In verse 31. So but what we'll talk about in a couple of months, he says, just like to the knower of reality who is asleep within the fleshy body, which is like a cart, activity, nishta, and sleep are just like to a person sleeping in a cart, that cart moving, standing, or the cart remaining alone. So just like to a person sleeping in a cart, there is no cart. Because the person is asleep, so there's no body, no world, nothing. For the jnani, there is no body or world or anything. This body, which is like a cart, is just in the view of the ajnani. The jnani still seems to be in a body. But the jnani is not at all aware of that, as Bhagavan clearly indicates in this verse.
Exactly. Thank you, Michael. So now go ahead, Angelica. Sorry to have you make you wait. Go ahead.
It's actually really appreciated. I guess to the ego, right? But intuition is part of this clarity of intellect, or intuition is part of is Maya too, or is actually Bhagavan?
Intuition is a function of the mind. Sometimes we have a hunch, we have a gut feeling. We feel this is right, or this is that. An intuition is something, but we feel we know, but we don't have any justification for claiming to know it. So intuition, sometimes certain intuitions may come by grace. But whatever intuitions we have, an intuition is never a certain knowledge. If it's a certain knowledge, then we wouldn't call it an intuition. So we always have to test our intuitions. So now we have come to Bhagavan. We've been attracted to Bhagavan. We have a very strong intuition, but what Bhagavan teaches us is correct. The Bhagavan is the real thing. And we can justify our belief in that to some extent by the logic of his teachings. But we cannot verify what Bhagavan has taught us perfectly without knowing what we actually are. We have to put it to even in the process of investigating ourselves, it becomes more and more clear to us how obviously true Bhagavan's words are. But we cannot claim to have absolute certainty until we know ourselves as we actually are. So as a general rule, an intuition is something worth considering. An intuition is something worth investigating. But we can never, so long as it's just an intuition, we have no way of justifying it. So yeah, we do have ways of justifying our belief in Bhagavan. But initially, when we're attracted to Bhagavan, there's just some intuition draws us to Bhagavan. Then when we begin to go into his teachings and we see how logical they are, then we are more convinced. So then something more than just intuition. And then when we put it into practice, it becomes even more clear to us how true they are. So an intuition is only an initial intimation, but many intuitions are an intuition by definition is not a certain knowledge, because different people have different intuitions. So just because you have an intuition, it doesn't mean you know something. You just have a gut feeling that is the case.
It can be still not clear because it can be contaminated by perception.
Exactly.
All of that, right?
Exactly.
Until that is clear, then we can actually but it's a knowing for nobody, and to get nothing, and to lose nothing.
Yeah.
There's no, in a way, I guess it blends, it goes back to its source, right?
Yes. As far as spiritual things are concerned, the intuitions we have are likely to be true to the extent that our mind is pure. That is, a pure mind will see things more clearly. But people, and there are some people who even describe jnana as you get intuitive knowledge of yourself. That's a very, very inappropriate use of the word intuition, or it's based on a very serious misunderstanding of what jnana is. Jnana is infinite clarity. So it's way, way beyond that is on a scale. Intuition is just the beginning, and the absolute clarity is the end. Their intuition, not only in the spiritual world, even in science. For example, scientists get an intuition. They think this is so, but then they test their intuition. They experiment or they observe things, and slowly, slowly they get confirmation for their intuition. Until some more evidence comes along, because the nature of science, it's always changing. What was believed in the past is later found to be not exactly correct. So they refine and refine and refine. But science works very much on intuition. First, they have an idea that this is so, then they try and seek evidence for it, and they test it, and they try to disprove their intuition in order to get stronger evidence for it. And so in all fields of human endeavor, all fields of seeking knowledge in any way, intuition has a role to play. But many intuitions, sometimes we have an intuition, and when we put it to the test, we find it was a wrong intuition. But intuition is a step on the way to knowledge. That is, when we test our intuitions, we find some intuitions were mistaken, so we reject those, and other intuitions seem to be closer to the mark, so we follow those.
It kind of seems like sometimes there's like a knowing, but it goes very, very deep, coming from a very deep part. And it's like, I just know that this is gonna happen. Like you kind of like, I don't know, it's like a projection or something.
Yeah, yes.
But it's like, I don't know, like, yeah, like,
Yeah.
I guess it's just going back
Yeah.
inside, and there's nothing to project.
Yes.
Yeah.
That is, as I said, intuition is a function of the mind. The mind is always trying to know things, and sometimes it has a hunch that something is the case, but sometimes the hunches are correct, sometimes they're wrong. That's intuition. But what we are seeking within ourselves is the perfect clarity of awareness of ourself as we actually are. So though intuitions may occur along the way, they may serve a purpose, but they're only stepping stones. And we shouldn't have unquestioning belief in our intuition, because sometimes, so long as there's a mind, it's fallible. So we get things wrong sometimes. But in this path of self-investigation, we are looking more and more within. When we say looking within, that means we are looking back at ourselves, the light of awareness. So the more we are self-attentive, the more we attend to this light that shines within us as the awareness I am, the more and more our mind is purified and clarified. So then we see more and more clearly.
Thank you, Michael. On the previous point, Carlos, related to that, Carlos has a question. Some people claim to have channeled spiritual teachings directly from God without being jnanis themselves. If this is so, can these people faithfully channel the teachings of God or Guru without distorting them?
Well, yeah, that's always a problem, because the perfect channel is only, that is, ego will always, anything that goes through ego will be influenced by its vasanas. So even if we are channeling some teachings, how perfectly we're channeling those teachings depends upon the purity and clarity of our own mind. So the perfect teachings are when the mind is completely removed, In the case of Bhagavan, there's no mind, no ego at all. So the teachings come through in their pristine purity.
Would we say that, Michael, would we say that religions are filtered through the vasanas of the founders?
Certain religions, yes. I mean, yes, certainly. But not all religions have founders. Hinduism, for example, there's no founder of Hinduism is not a single religion. It's a whole family of religions, and it's constantly evolving. A new form, new forms of Hinduism are coming. It's a very organic religion. So the religions where there's a founder and one book, which is the divine revelation, and everything else is not divine revelation. They are very limited type of religions.
Bhagavan said that these were stepping stones to reality?
Yes, everything is a stepping stone. But the reality is where we lose ourselves completely. As he says in verse 21, verse 21 of Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu, Uṇādal Khan, becoming food is seeing. So we will know the reality only when we, as ego, cease to exist. And then what remains knowing the reality is the reality itself.
Thank you.
No, that is being alone is the true knowing.
So in relation to Carlos's question, can these people faithfully channel the teachings of God or Guru without distorting them? I think there was one of the verses, right? Recently we discussed like the blind leading the blind. If it's not a jnani, they really can't read us the correct way.
Even if they do, even if they are perfect channels for the divine revelation, then it has to go through our mind. Our mind filters it and distorts it. You take any religion, Christianity, Islam, Buddhism, or the myriad forms of Hinduism or whatever, everyone is understanding in their own way.
Right.
So any revelation that is mediated by mind is necessarily imperfect. So the only perfect revelation is the revelation that is ever shining in our heart as our own being. So seeing that alone is seeing the reality.
Right.
Bhagavan says in verse 16 of Upadeshundya, Veli videngale vittu, leaving or letting go of external phenomena, manam tan oli uru ordale, the mind knowing its own form of light, unme unichiyam, that is real knowledge or real awareness. In the Sanskrit version, he says, drisya varitam, withdrawn from drisya, or having withdrawn from the drisya, that means the mind withdrawn from the drisya, or warding off the drisya, chittam atmanaha chitva darshanam, the mind seeing its own chitva, its own nature of awareness, tattva darshanam, that is seeing the reality. So it's only by seeing ourselves as we actually are, that is the only real revelation. Any revelation in words is always imperfect. Bhagavan himself said, the ultimate teaching has to be silence. It cannot be words. Words can point us in the right direction, but the words can never convey the truth. The truth is silence. That is, silence here doesn't mean a temporary silence of mind. Silence, when the silence Bhagavan talks about, is the silence of being, the eternal silence, the silence that is never disturbed by any amount of noise. And he defines that the state in which I does not rise is in Nana, he says, in the 6th paragraph of Nana, I'll get the words. he says, Nan enum ninevu kinjitum illa idame surupamahum. That is the place. It literally means place, but it implies the state in which there is not the slightest trace of a thought called I, in other words, ego, is Swarupa, is our real nature. Adu ve monam anapadam. That alone is called mona. So mona means our own being. The state in which we do not rise as I, that is mona. And
So
that alone can reveal the truth.
Right.
Because that is the truth.
But till we get to that state, we're using those teachings as a guide, right?
Yes.
So, so it's better to stick with, as much as possible, the original words of who your intuition says it's a jnani, rather than going through all the other ones who say they claim to channel those teachings. It's better to go right to like in our case, it would be Bhagavan's own words as much as possible, rather than somebody wrote it, somebody did the translation, etc., etc. Right. So thank you. So does that answer your question, Carlos?
But even
absolutely. Thank you, Michael.
Even Bhagavan's teachings, in how many different ways people understand Bhagavan's teachings. Though Bhagavan couldn't have been clearer in what he taught, still we understand only according to our capacity to understand. If you come to the ocean with a thimble, you'll be able to carry away a thimble full of ocean water. If you come with a bucket, you'll be able to take a bucket load. If you come with a tanker, you'll be able to take away a tanker load. But if you want to fathom the ocean, you have to dive in it and lose yourself. So we can truly understand Bhagavan only by losing ourselves in him.
Right.
Until we have lost ourselves in him, our understanding is necessarily limited and imperfect.
Right. Thank you, Michael. Carlos, you're saying something. Go ahead.
Yeah, he answered perfectly. Thank you, Michael.
You're welcome. Thank you. So, Murthy, I think I saw your hand raised along this topic. So go ahead, and then we'll go to other questioners. Murthy?
Namo Ramnaya, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what Michael said. When he said it's all grace, right? You asked him what brought you to go on. Michael first said grace.
First and last.
First and last. So I just wanted to, it sounded pretty abstract, and I'm sure there are quite a few like me who felt it's very abstract. I wanted to give some more elaborations on that to make it less abstract. So grace is what made the environment suitable for Michael to see Bhagavan's teaching as the non-yar material. Somehow the providence concocted a surrounding and a person and a situation where the teaching came in front of Michael's eyes. And Michael's mind makeup or mindset was open enough or seeking enough and pure enough to see the teaching and get appealed by it. Many of us have seen Bhagavan's books and teachings several years back, and it triggers something in us only after several years, right? So I'm sure a lot of us would have felt like that. So how else can we describe this? The appearance of Bhagavan's teaching in front of his eyes and his willingness to keep his eyes open and look for it, and then get attracted to it and pursue it to the extent that he will go into another foreign country and live there for a long time. So what else can make that happen other than grace?
Exactly. As Bhagavan said, grace is the beginning, the middle, and the end.
Exactly.
It's grace that draws us to him. It's grace that places those books in front of him, or in front of us. It's grace that enables us to clearly see what is said in those books. So it's all grace. And eventually it is grace that will swallow us. Because grace is nothing but that infinite clarity of pure awareness that is always shining in our heart as our own being, I am.
I don't know why my video is going back and forth. I'm sorry, but the grace is one thing which is totally inexplicable, meaning we cannot explain it. However much we use very appropriate words, we cannot explain it to somebody else. But it's very, very perceptible to oneself.
Exactly. Who will know you? Who will understand?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And who can convey it to somebody else with words.
Yes.
So what is very perceptible to yourself, very clear to yourself, very concrete and very apparent and very clear to yourself, but which you cannot explain to somebody else. That's what grace is.
Yes. Eden sail ari vari darkum, he says in the first verse of Arunachashtakam.
Exactly. Thank you. That's what I wanted to say. So
Ari varu giriyena, as if an insentient hill, Amadaru Mamma. It stands as if an insentient hill. Amma, that's an expression of wonder. Adi sayin, Eden sail, ari vari darkum. Its action, that is the arrow sail, the action of grace, is wonderful. It cannot be understood, well, very rare or very difficult to understand by anyone. We can understand it only by losing ourselves in it.
Okay, that's good. Thank you, Michael. So let me move on to the other questioners. Bruce, is your question pertaining to this topic or is it something else? I think he's you're muted. You're muted.
It relates, but what
okay, go ahead then make a comment so that way we can our question.
The grace that Michael is describing and Murti was trying to relate to, it seems to me that Michael was outwardly seeking before he encountered Nanar, and Nanar turned him inward. So the efforts might have been sattvic before his encounter with Nanar, but the Nanar experience is what has turned him more inward. I think that
yes,
and Michael knows that grace that.
But why was Michael seeking? Why Michael could have been seeking so many things in this world.
Yes,
why was Michael seeking?
There was a certain sattvic.
It's all the grace. It's grace alone.
It is grace. That's true. Yes.
Even if we say Michael's mind was had a certain degree of purity, where did that purity come from? It's only by grace.
Now it goes back to my question, if that makes sense, Kumar.
Yes.
So I posted the question. If
you did. Okay, go ahead and read it.
So ego, because I was reading this just the other day, ego eats or consumes the five senses, while God eats or consumes us as ego. This is why all karmas and vasanas are destroyed.
Yes.
Does that make sense?
That is, ego consumes not the senses, it consumes the sensory input, the sensory perceptions. Yeah. That is the food that's why Bhagavan says in verse 25 of Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu, Urupatri undam, grasping form, it comes into being. Urupatri nikkam, grasping form, it stands. Urupatri undu mika ongam. Undu means feeding. So grasping and feeding on forms, it flourishes abundantly. So the forms are all the vishayas, all the sensory input, all phenomena are vishayas, of the forms that we are feeding on. But he has to feed on us. And he will feed on us only when he will never force himself on us. He will feed on us only when we are willing to let go and surrender ourselves completely to him. But even that willingness comes only by his grace. So it's all, as Bhagavan said, grace is the beginning, the middle, and the end.
Okay, thank you, Michael.
Thank you.
So I got 3 more questions.
Thank
Go
you,
ahead,
Michael.
Nicholas.
Thank you. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Great, great. Wanted to ask, while we are building that willingness to get lost in him, and when we already have given some steps ahead and experienced some of that grace, but then happen to go back and experience more of the limitations in the ego mind, then we run into stories. I'm going to talk about myself. Like, I've run into stories about fears of becoming that true self, of what would that true self do? Like, would that self mess around with everything that I have planned already, with regards to my life, my professional development, my, I don't know, my routines. And so I'm struggling sometimes to find more trust in go and jump again, because there's all these ego stories. I know there are ego stories, but like, what do I do with those fears that would I picture myself doing things like, for instance, being more public, or doing, maybe quitting what I'm doing and doing something else. And then I kind of like hesitate a lot in going back to, experience grace. And it also happens to be strengthened by some addictive patterns in which I'm struggling to move forward from.
Grace will mess with everything. Grace will mess with the one who has all these fears and apprehensions and everything. Grace is Shiva. Shiva is the destroyer. It will destroy everything. But in destroying everything, it gives everything. It gives the one, in exchange for all these false things that our mind is seeking, it will destroy all these things along with the mind, and it will give us the one real thing that ultimately we're all seeking. When we desire, when we have ambitions, when we have plans, it's all because we think happiness is somewhere there in the future. If I have a better profession, I'll be happy. If I get married, I'll be happy. If I have children, I'll be happy. If I get more salary, I'll be happy. If I learn more, I'll be happy. If I have more name and fame, I'll be happy. Whatever we are seeking in this world, all our desires and all our fears are driven by one basic desire, the desire to be happy. Not just a little bit happy, because no little happiness will satisfy us. The only happiness that will satisfy us is infinite happiness. Because infinite happiness is our real nature. So we're all seeking, knowingly or unknowingly, we're all seeking the infinite happiness that is our own real nature. And grace is that infinite happiness, but pulls us back within and devours us, so that the infinite happiness alone remains. Until then, vasanas will be rising, and the vasanas rise in the form of desires and fears and this and that and everything. Grace is here to destroy everything. It's a wild forest fire that will destroy everything. Not only all the trees, but all the seeds that give that can sprout as trees.
It's the jnani fire, right?
Jnanagni. That's what the previous verse talked about. Jnanagni, the fire of jnana.
Right. Thank you,
That is
Mike.
what Arunaksha, that column of fire, that's what it represents. It's the fire of jnana. The fire that destroys everything. It destroys everything by destroying just one thing. By destroying ego, it destroys everything.
Thank you, Michael. Rabi Day.
Yes.
Yeah, go ahead. Read your
So
question. Yeah, I can go ahead.
this pertains to the verse that you explained. And one of the things that you mentioned for the jnani, it's a God who acts through him, so his actions are pure. Now, who is this God who acts through someone who is a doer of action, whether it's a jnani or a jnani?
God is jnana itself. And jnana doesn't do anything. Jnana is just being. But by just being as it is, everything happens as it's meant to happen. That's why we say God, it is God acting through the mind, speech, and body of the jnani.
So
Not
whether
that
you're
God
a
is ever
jnani,
doing anything. God never does anything. But just by being as he is, he does everything.
that's what I thought. Just like when the sun shines, the flowers bloom and wilt
Exactly.
away.
That's
right?
what Bhagavan says in the 15th paragraph of Nana.
So that's true both for jnani and agyani, right? So the clarity or the action.
No, in the case of the Ajnani, there is a seeming doer, ego, that has its seeming likes and dislikes. The jnani, in the case of the jnani, there is no separate will. The will is completely surrendered, along with the one who has the will, namely ego. But in the case of the jnani, in the case of the Ajnani, ego is still there. And ego has its likes and dislikes. So we can say everything is done by God only when we have surrendered ourselves completely.
Makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Ram Tenati, you want to read your question?
Yes. Michael, the question is, everything that we see outside is the creation of our mind. If the mind is not there, there is no world. So
Yes.
That's a question. It's not a comment I'm making. That's a question that I have. Isn't that the case?
That is exactly what Bhagavan says in verse 26 of Uڵḷadu Nāṛpadu. If ego comes into being, everything comes into being. If ego is not, everything is not. Ego itself is everything.
So the dream that we have and the waking state that is there, both are equally unreal and creations of the mind.
Both are dreams, yes.
Okay. And then the ego goes through transient states of happiness and misery, and it struggles throughout the process.
Yeah.
Doesn't it have a desire to be happy all the time?
It has a desire to be happy all the time, but it's looking for happiness in the wrong places. So it's always, because if I get the newest model of iPhone or the newest car or something, I'll be happy. So I struggle to get the money in order to buy the latest car, and I get the latest car because I've been wanting that for so long. When I get it, that agitation of the mind in the form of that desire for that car subsides. So I seem to get pleasure from that car. But is there any pleasure in the car? No, the the happiness is coming only from within. So we are all seeking happiness, but seeking happiness in the wrong place. So because we seek for it in the wrong place, when our desires are satisfied, we experience an iota of that, a tiny fraction of that happiness that is ever present in our heart, of that infinite happiness that is ever present in our heart. But as the desire, I got the new car, so I'm satisfied. But now my neighbor has just bought a beautiful new yacht costing $56 million. So now I want that. But how can I get that? I don't have enough money. So the desire, the nature of Bhagavan says, there's no bottomless pit that is so impossible to fill as the pit of desire. Because whatever desire may be satisfied, another desire will rise in its place. And desire is misery. Because desire is an agitation of the mind. And so long as that desire, the unsatisfied desire is there, it will be agitating the mind. So it will be in misery.
So when
how can I rest happy when my neighbor has got this beautiful yacht and I don't yet have this yacht? So I work hard and I get my millions and I buy the yacht. But then someone else, now Elon Musk got a spaceship. I can't yet afford a spaceship, so I must get a spaceship. So it goes on. Desire is something that can never be satisfied.
And then the neighbor that you talked about, Elon Musk that you talked about, those that we see in the world in itself is a creation of the mind to start with.
Of course it is. Of course it is.
Okay. So what it's comparing to is also characters that it itself created. There is no Kumar, there is no Michael, there is no whoever else. It's all creations of the mind.
Ego is a shadow and it's chasing shadows.
Okay. When the agitation,
its own shadows.
When the agitation is subsided, it gets happiness temporarily. That happiness comes because of its contact with our true nature. Is that what happens at that point?
Exactly. Because when the desire is satisfied, the mind is temporarily calmed down. To the extent to which the mind is calmed down, it experiences the happiness that is ever present there. What is hiding the happiness is the agitation caused by desire, the mental agitation.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
When the mind subsides completely in sleep, we're happy.
Yep. In fact, we look forward to sleep every day.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you, Michael.
Thank you, Kumar.
Sarah, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Kumar. Hello, everyone. It's interesting how my question was unrelated to the verse that we looked at today, but it all came right back to the matter of desires and such. So, Michael, I wanted to ask about, so first of all, we understand that surrender and self-inquiry have to go hand in hand, that they work best in parallel. But with surrender, there is a point where one has to, in a sense, train the mind to follow the path as well. And one of the things that I struggle with is understanding that if one, in the path of surrender, one must not have any desires of one's own, right? But at the same time, there is a certain degree of planning that the mind does on its own, because naturally the mind needs to sort of think of, okay, then I will do this next, and then I follow it up with that to deal with whatever situation I am facing. So how does one distinguish between that planning and desire? Because a plan would inadvertently show that there is an objective one is working towards. And then there is that additional element of fear that works in parallel. So how do we distinguish between these threads of sort of thoughts?
Okay. Firstly, desire and fear, so long as there is desire, there will be fear. Because if we desire something or desire to retain something, we fear to lose it. So we desire to live in this body. So we fear death. So desire and fear are just two sides of the same coin. Regarding surrender and self-investigation, surrender can begin before we come to the path of self-investigation. Surrender begins if we're following the path of bhakti. We understand that what stands between us and God is our will. Whatever is happening is God's will, but we don't like what is happening. So we try to avoid things, and we desire better, what we consider to be better things. So our will is standing between us and God. So surrender begins with trying to surrender our will to the will of God. God knows what is best. So whatever God wills, whatever God wants for me is what is best for me. So I shouldn't want anything for myself. So we begin trying to give up our likes and dislikes and to accept whatever happens as the will of God. But the very nature of ego is to have likes, dislikes, desires, attachments, hopes, fears, and so on. So we cannot surrender our will entirely so long as we remain as ego. We can maybe attenuate our will. We can decrease the strength of our likes, dislikes, desires, attachments, and so on, but they will remain inevitably so long as we survive as ego. So when we go deeper in the path of self-investigation, or in the path of surrender, we understand that the real obstacle, well, the root obstacle, is not just our will, but we ourselves who had this will. So then it goes from surrender to self-surrender. That is, ego needs to surrender itself. But how can ego surrender itself? The nature of ego, as Bhagavan explains in verse 25 of Uḷḷadu Nāṛpadu, is to grasp form. Grasping form, it comes into being. Grasping form, it stands. Grasping and feeding on forms, it flourishes abundantly. Leaving form, it grasps form. So the very nature of ego is grasping form. Grasping form means grasping things other than itself. In other words, attending to vishayas, attending to phenomena, attending to anything other than itself is grasping form. But the same ego, but cannot rise, stand, or flourish without grasping form. This same ego, if instead of trying to grasp form, if it tries to grasp itself, what happens? Tedinal otum pidicum. If sought, it takes flight. That means if ego turns its attention back within to find out who am I, it will take flight. It'll run away. In other words, it'll subside and dissolve back into its source. So from this verse, we can understand the nature of ego is to rise, stand, and flourish by attending to things other than itself, but to subside and dissolve back into its source by attending to itself. So how do we surrender ourselves? Only we can surrender ego, we can surrender ourselves, that is, we as ego can surrender ourselves only by attending to ourselves. So this is why in the 13th paragraph of Nāṇa, Bhagavan begins by saying, Anma chintane tavira, vera chintane kalamba vituku, satram idam kodamal, Atmanishta paranai iripadai, tannai isanuku alipadam. What that means is being as Atmanishta paran. Atmanishta paran means one who is firmly fixed as oneself. Being as we actually are, in other words. How to be as we actually are, he explained in the previous clause. Anma chintane tavira, vera chintane kalamba vituku satram idam kodamal. Giving not even the slightest room to the rising of any thought other than Atma-chintana. Atma-chintana literally means thought about, means self-thought. In other words, self-attentiveness. So if we attend to ourselves so keenly, but we give no room to the rising of any other thought, we thereby subside and remain as Atmanishta paran. And that alone is giving ourselves to God, he says. So he clearly defines what self-surrender is, what it is, how to give ourselves to God, only by clinging to self-attentiveness, thereby subsiding and being as we actually are.
Michael,
but then now I'm coming. Can I come to your main question?
Sure. Sorry.
You said what about all the planning and all these things? No planning is necessary, because if you're tending to yourself, you will subside, and there's no one to plan anything. So, but then what will happen to? What about I have got a family to look after. I've got this responsibility. I've got that responsibility. Bhagavan answers in the next sentence. Isam peril evlo bharate patalum avalavayum avavahitu kara, something like that. However much burden we place on God, he will bear all of it. So even the burden of thinking, of planning, leave it to him. And then in the next sentence he says, when that one Parameshwara Shakti is driving all karyas, in this context, all karyas means everything that needs to happen, everything that ought to happen, everything that we need to do, everything we ought to do, he's making it all happen. When such is the case, why should we, instead of yielding ourselves to it, be constantly thinking it's necessary to do like this, it's necessary to do like that? And then he gives the analogy of the person traveling in a train. When we're traveling in a train, we know the train is carrying all the burden. It's carrying us and it's also carrying our luggage. So why should we suffer carrying our luggage on our head instead of putting the luggage aside and traveling at ease, traveling comfortably, traveling happily? So the more we, in Arunachapattikam, in the 9th verse, Bhagavan says, I'm saying now, just get the words, he expresses it very beautifully. Paramanip Pirandiv Ulihine Talil Patriam Petradu Podom. That is what I have gained by separating from you and carrying this world on my head is enough. So we unnecessarily take all this burden on ourselves. We think I have to do this. I am a mother, I am a father, I have the responsibility to my children, I have responsibility to my family, I've got responsibility to my elderly parents, I've got this responsibility, I've got that responsibility. All this, why do we take all this on our head? Leave it all to him. Cannot Bhagavan take care of all these things better than we can? So the real surrender is where we don't even rise as ego to feel, I have to do this, I have to do that. Leave everything to him. He will take care of everything. So all the planning and everything, if you give up your desires, the planning will also, the activity of planning may go on the surface of the mind, but inwardly we should be detached from that. We need to separate ourselves from this mind. Yes, so long as we allow the mind to go outwards, it will naturally be planning this and hoping this, and all these activities are there. But we need to separate ourselves from this mind by let the mind do whatever it wants. Our aim is to turn within. So we turn our attention within and we hold on to him in our heart. That is the real surrender.
So one of the things that I've noticed, Michael, is at times it feels like the detachment to outcomes and the fear and planning, they're all working in parallel. So yes. At the same moment, my mind will be planning and scheming, and then also understanding, well, it's going to come to nothing. What will happen will happen.
Yes.
Is that possible, or is it that the mind is vacillating between these two thoughts back and forth?
The mind is vacillating. That's the nature of the mind to vacillate. Our job is to separate from the mind by holding on to ourselves. The more we hold on to ourselves, the less we will be affected by this vacillating mind.
Okay.
Thank you, Michael. Rati Krishnan. Rati?
Yes, I was going to say, first of all, that, first about two things. Thing about grace first when Bhagavan says in Nanyar, happiness is the cause for love, what he really, I think he meant is there that, the love really, that we're always looking at all these transient outdoor objects and outside things, but really it's the love to turn within and the love to really love for God, which is really that is what, once we have more of that love and we're greedy for that love, and we let go of our greed for all these other desires, and Shiva does that the best. Arunachala Shiva and Arunachala Ramana does that the best, as he's a killer of desire. He's Kamari, as you once mentioned in another of your talks. He can kill desire more than anything else. He can extinguish us completely. So in that sense, love it's a love to turn within, which is, would you say the desire, the grace is experienced both as a push and a pull? The pull to turn within, and also the push to push out outward objects and throw them away and relegate them to the dustbin. We don't want all the junk that comes into our life, and we just want to throw them out. And you want to really absorb more. The graces, you feel more and more the connection, the channeling with the one thing you're seeking in life, the only one thing you really want. Would you say that is it?
Yes, yeah. Firstly, yes, grace does. It pulls us from within and it's pushing us from outside. That every experience we undergo, all the difficulties, the disappointments, everything, it is grace pushing us from outside. And the same grace is also pulling us from inside. About the desire, the love to turn within and the desire for all these external things, they are actually the same love. There's only one love. We are misdirecting our love by seeking happiness outside. That is happy. Love always, when Bhagavan says happiness alone is the cause for love, he means we will always love whatever we think will give us happiness. So long as we think happiness can be obtained outside, we will have love for outside things. We have love for acquiring more material things. We have love for the more learning. We have love for more name and fame, whatever it is. But that's all a misuse of our love, because we are seeking happiness where it doesn't lie. So when by his grace we get the viveka, the discrimination, to recognize that happiness doesn't lie outside, it lies only within, we begin to shift the focus of our love shifts from the external things to what is internal, because that alone is where happiness lies.
Yes. So
slowly, by grace, we are given this clarity to understand. We've all read Bhagavan, what Bhagavan has written, that there's no happiness in any of the things of the world. And we say to ourselves we've understood it, but none of us have really understood it, because if we'd really understood it, our mind wouldn't continue going outwards. The fact our mind continues going outwards means we are still, deep down, we are still believing, but we'll get happiness from these external things. So slowly, we've got to wean our mind off this. This is what Bhagavan referred to in this verse today as Oli, the light. That is the clarity. As we go deeper and deeper in this path, we get more and more clarity to see the ephemeral nature of all these things. Yes, if we work hard, we may be able to earn $1 billion, we may be able to achieve this, we may be able to achieve that. But is any of this, how real are all these things? One day, this body is going to die and all this is going to come to an end like a dream. So why do we spend our lifetime struggling to improve our material circumstances, to struggling to gain more friends, to have better relationships, for this or that? We're always looking for things outside, thinking that our happiness depends on external things. Whereas the truth is, happiness, it's infinite happiness, is our own real nature. So all we need to do to experience that infinite happiness is to know ourselves. As Bhagavan says in that same first sentence of Nana, to attain that happiness, which is one's own real nature, tanne tan arido vendum. It is necessary for oneself to know oneself.
Thank you, Michael, and Namo Ramanaya.
Thank you, Michael. So with that, we'll adjourn today's session. And if there's any questions or something, please email me and we will post it to Michael next meeting. Namo Ramanaya.
Namo Ramanaya.